Good afternoon, everyone. How lovely to see you all on a dull Saturday afternoon. But what we're doing here is not going to be dull, I promise you. I'm so glad you've made it and that you're part of this book launch. Now, I'm Christoph. I'm the vicar here of St Mary's Church of Denham Parish. And can we give a warm welcome to Joe Smith.
Thank you.
I wonder, have you got a favourite entrance music?
I think I entered to the Survivor. Just quickly before I move on, I'd just like to take a very quick opportunity to thank everybody for attending to listen. So thanks for that. And so back to where you was. I think I entered to that theme once, at least once. Yeah. So it makes me want to move a bit still.
Good. Have you brought your boxing gloves to get a bit of a warm up?
Well. No, there's a time and a place for them, and here's not the place.
Brilliant. Now, here's a trivia question for you, Joe. One of the themes that we played earlier was the Star Wars theme. Did anyone recognise that? Oh yes, quite a few Star Wars fans here. That was once used by which boxer as their entrance music? I can tell you the year, because that's got to give you a good clue.
Give you a clue, yeah?
1977.
Harley was at the end of his career, maybe 77. Harley. I go Muhammad Ali. He must have been around the end of his career.
Guess what? He's right. There you go. It was Muhammad Ali, and apparently he was the boxer who started that kind of trend to pick your entrance music in the boxing ring. Brilliant. Well, Joe, you and I are a very unlikely pairing. Not just physically. But when I look at the two of us, we've got very different stories, although we're not dissimilar in age. You're a couple of years younger than me, but we've lived through the same times. However, our stories couldn't be different. Now, I've read your book over the last few days, so it's fresh in my mind. I thought, our stories could not be more different. What we've experienced is so different. And to add to that, I mean, what we need to say before we talk about your life, when you read the book, you'll think, it really is a bit of a miracle that Joe Smith is sitting here today. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Good. That's the right answer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, our life stories are very different. And also, you know, you grew up in a Romany family. I grew up in Germany. And one of the pointed bits where you do a bit of the history of the Romanys, worldwide and in the UK, those of us who know their history know that one of the people groups most persecuted by Nazi Germany were the Romanies. And, you know, estimates vary a bit, but historians think that up to 500,000 Romanies died in Nazi concentration camps. So here's the Romany boy, here's the German boy, and yet we sit together here and we are friends and we are part of the same family.
Very much so.
Because of our faith in Jesus.
Very much so.
And
yeah.
that is such a gift.
That is a gift.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we dig into your life story. Joe, tell us what you did yesterday. If you can't remember, I can prod your memory.
That's a good question. What are we on today? We're on Saturday. I had an elbow operation. Anaesthetics made me go a little bit... I had my elbow operated on.
You did, and it's amazing that you're here, and you're still in a bit of pain, but I hear the operation went well.
Thank God it went well, yeah, and I'm not in too much discomfort, so if I'm talking a bit gibberish, it's just me, it's not the...
Well, and of course there's a connection with your life story, Joe, because you have asked a lot of your elbow in boxing, in golfing, and it just needed a bit of looking at, didn't it?
Yeah, it's my second elbow. I had my right elbow went about 20 years ago when I was age 30. 20 years on now, my left elbow gives way, but the life as a boxer and a golfer, professional in both sports, it's called wear and tear. So.
There's a gentleman at the back who just apologised for his phone going off. You know him well, Joe.
Oh, right.
And that reminds me of a very funny story in your book when I think it was your mum's phone that went off at a critical moment when you were about to place a really important shot at a golf tournament.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And you said, well, you know, you were annoyed, but you thought, poor old mum probably doesn't know how to silence her phone. So I hope you've all got your phones on silent. so that we can talk without any interruptions. Joe, as I said at the beginning, I've really enjoyed reading your book. This is the second edition of a book you wrote just over 10 years ago, and now you've brought it up to speed about what happened in the last 10 years. You've changed the title. The old title was Gypsy Joe, now it's called Custhy.
Yeah.
Ah, they say, well, you guys know more than I do. I was racking my brain, I found the word Custhy once mentioned in the book. Tell us why you called it Custhy.
Yes, I'm interested. Some lady at the front was keen to, I said we'll save that moment. She was keen to ask the question. We Romanys originate from India some 1350 so years ago, and they got their own language. They rebelled against their rulers, and that's where the way of life was formed. And some language barriers, so their own language was formed. And it's a Romany word. Custhy means good.
Excellent.
Basically, but you will see it in Delboy and Rodney. It's used so much in England. It's very much gone into the Cockney world as well. But Custhy means good. So nothing too sinister, it just means good. Everything's Custhy, Rodney.
I did watch Delboy, but I didn't pick that up because when I watched it, my English wasn't as good as it is today, and I probably didn't understand quite a few Cockney words when I watched it. Well, you've just said you grew up in a Romany family, and a lot of what you tell us about your childhood sounds absolutely wonderful and idyllic. Tell us a bit about what was so special about your childhood.
Well, love really. I mean, from my parents and surrounding families, we were just brought up with, it was a bit maybe alien to the mainstream, if you like, from the non-Romany world, but for us we didn't know any different. So I didn't have any schooling, but we used to make our own way of fun, and that was life and love, so we were very well fed, as you probably noticed. Yeah, and it was just bathed in love really, and we had lots of excitement. We were a sporting family, and we might not have had High Street, like many kids of our era, we didn't have High Street brands or as such to play with, but we would manufacture and make something to play with. So we were sporting kids. It was lovely, fantastic, and yeah, just good really. Nothing bad to say about it.
Yeah. You did not learn to read in the usual way, and I think it's such an amazing achievement that you've written this book. When I think that as a young boy you couldn't read and write. So if it hadn't been for one particular man, you maybe would have never written this book. Tell us about that man.
Oh, it was fantastic memory. You see, one thing I'll say about it's very easy to remember a truth, it's very difficult to remember a lie. So everything in my book is ABC 1, 2, 3. I might just need enlightened to the moment, but I remember it again like yesterday. We were camping in the summer months in a field in Portsmouth, just outside the city centre, and I remember it like yesterday. This old greying gentleman pulls up, and a little white maxi, we used to call them maxi cars then. What was the brand? Austin Maxi. He pulls up, shirt and tie, typical of a dress code of his era. Poor old gentleman. And we were a bit, who's this old bloke? He's probably from the council, issuing us some papers, so we had to move on. And that would be the end of our stay in this beautiful green field. That's what we suspected. And he got out in his deep Hampshire accent and he says, right, I think the government should recognise my special way of teaching, and I've come down to help you guys. You watch how I pronounce. So he quickly learnt me ABC alphabet. He quickly then learnt me like the TH, the th, whatever, etc., etc. And he learnt me pronunciations. His name is Jim Needle, and if you know, I always reach out, hoping somebody's going to reach back because I'm so ever indebted to him. But this poor old gentleman with the slow-in vehicles in them days would take the journey from Portsmouth to Epsom and Hounslow respectively, to give his time free of charge to me, and he quickly, as I say, learnt me ABC, pronunciations of words. I was then picking up newspapers, etc., etc., and before no time it seemed, I learnt how to read, and I can actually say I think I'm a fairly good reader, whilst my writing's a lot to be desired and my spelling's mediocrity, but I'm a good reader, and I'm forever indebted to that moment, so I feel very lucky and blessed, and thank you Jim Needle, forever, yeah.
Now, as a child, Joe, you had two dreams, big dreams. One was to become a champion boxer, and the other one was to become a champion golfer. and you achieved both those dreams. You've excelled at both those sports. It probably was a bit more unusual for you as a Romany child to have a dream to become a champion golfer. What was it that got you into golf and that fascinated you about the game of golf?
Yeah, well, I mean, with the boxing, I come from both sides. My mum and dad's side, there were a long stream of knuckle fighters and professional boxers from both sides. So that was quite expectant. But you bear in mind, my grandfather was a seasoned, good professional boxer around the country, challenging for titles. But what happens when your lifespan is, say, i.e. a physical sportsman such as football, should we say tennis, boxing, etc., those sort of physical sports tend to fizzle out around the sort of 35 years of age mark, give or take, but you know, as a sort of generalised measuring stick. This, of course, happened to my grandfather. So he then went looking for the juices or something to, you know, that he enjoyed as a boxing professional, a substitute, if you like, and his substitute fell in golf. Unusual again, it was a difficult sport to get into. Some people would have referred to it as a rich man's game, or even a bit snobbery even. But he, you know, had this style and charisma to get into the golfing circles, and I'd be pulling his trolley as a little boy as a caddy. And I remember it again, just like yesterday. I'd allowed him to go 60 or 70 yards ahead, get a ball out of his bag, tee it up, whack it. So it was now becoming, with quite regularity, the ball would be running and passed through their feet. It wouldn't be a great big high-powered towering shot because I was only 6 or 7, but it would be a nice sort of straightish shot, slightly airballed, running through their legs. So they'd be, where's this ball come from? And my grandfather would say, oh, it's my little grandson. Well, he can do that with regularity. He's hit it 70, 80 yards. Yes, he can, and he allowed me then to play the par 3 holes when nobody was looking. So quickly, you're right, you can play the par 3. So there's 3, 4 par 3s on a golf course. So that was it, and then I was hooked then. That was me. I mean, and just a while after that, maybe when I was 8, 9, going back to when I learned how to read, I'd read every book in Europe. I knew every golfer in Europe. On you know, I was just fascinated by the game, and that's how it started for me.
Yeah. If some of you sit here and think, I have no idea what he's talking about, par 3 and all the rest of it, be assured, I don't either. I've never swung a golf club in my life, and I think if anyone can teach it me, it's probably you, but I think you'd even despair of me, Joe. Have we got any golfers here? Hands up if you're a golfer. Oh, good, we've got a good smattering. Excellent. Well, there you go. Well, Joe, there was a moment in your life when you were doing really well in golfing, but suddenly it was a bit like a break in the movie of your golfing career. And it had to do, to put not too fine a term on it, it had to do with prejudice.
Yeah.
And that cut you deep.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
So tell us what happened and what effect it had on you in the years after that.
Well, what had happened, I was at a public municipal golf course where the condition of the course was a bit sort of, I didn't have the financial input, and it was a bit so-so, but I was then offered to go to a private golf course. And then I got into the membership into the private golf course, and then we had the perfect practice facilities. We had 2 practice grounds, perfect greens, and I'm sorry if the people out there who don't quite understand this, but basically the conditions were perfect for me, any young man, to get on, and quickly I excelled, quickly I had achieved stuff in a short space of time. And I had a couple of course records to boast of then. I won the club championship, beating their leading player who won it 9 years out of 10 previously, and the year he had lost was in the final. So I'd just come in as a 15, I was between 15 and 16. I hadn't quite reached my 16th birthday, so I edged out their leading player in the club championship. I then won the London Junior Open, which was a very prestigious event for a short space of time, and I was presented with the prize by the then Prime Minister's husband, Dennis Thatcher, Margaret's husband then, 1987 that was. So it was a very big name, and to be receiving that trophy from, and the BBC cameras were there. And so I was announced as the winner, and this, you know, I think, you know, success sometimes breeds resentment to a lot of people. But coupled, this was very much the case, coupled with my background, they soon manufactured some complete and utter lies, and I was then actually asked to resign from my golf club. I didn't even know what the word meant, resign, trust me, in them days. I come out of that place completely in tears, and it had a devastating effect. And as I've said to people, I'd been, believe it or not, I'd been knuckle fighting since I was 6-year-old. It was like a national sport to us. I could handle myself physically, but as a 16-year-old, I couldn't handle that, because it's a different type of fight, you know. Punched on the nose is one thing. I was used to that stuff. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but this really, really did impact me, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And as did my parents. I mean, they could bathe me in love and protect me, but they didn't know golf and circles and background. So it had a massive impact on me, yeah.
Yeah. And as a result, you then your life slowly began to spiral downwards. You got into bad company, you made some bad decisions, and I'm going to read just a few sentences from your book, page 87. That's the chapter called Made Man, ? And in that you write, I have in recent years often puzzled over how quick I transformed from being a courteous, fresh-faced, law-abiding gypsy boy with the world at his feet into a hard-drinking, violent thug moving in criminal circles and destined to meet a sticky end.
Yeah, so it all sort of happened, you know. I mean, it's certainly not making any excuses, far from it. That'll never do, you know. I'll ask my good Lord for forgiveness, unintentional things I've done wrong, whatever the case is. But I'm not making no excuses here, but it all seemed to be a bit, when I look back at it, it all happened so quick. So it sort of spun around at a million miles an hour. But before I realised it, as Christoph said, I was gracing these fairways and playing this sort of very honourable sport. The next minute I knew it sort of built from quite quickly from me sticking up from my sisters in a just standing up with another fellow Romany in a dispute, and he was meant to be a superior fighter than me, and because he was a professional, he was mid-20s and I was still the boy. But I said, I'm not allowing you to do what you've done, and I'm going to challenge you, and we'll knock the air clear and we'll have a fight. And I won the fight against odds, and what comes with that, and sadly, well, it's not sadly, but in my case it was disappointing, I wish it hadn't come, was a reputation. And then people start patting you on the back. And then quickly before I knew it, I was getting recognised as a young lad, and I thought it was quite good at the time. In respect. I now know it wasn't so clever, but pats on the back, massage of my ego, and before I knew it, I was into some strange circles and involved in violence.
Yeah. And you said to me earlier, if people look for your book in a bookshop, they could find it in two places. One is sports book, the other one is true crime.
Yeah.
And we're not going to make any bones about it.
Nope.
Some of the stuff you've done, you're not proud about. But when I read those chapters, and you can read them for yourselves, we're not going to go too much into detail here. I'm thinking, if I were a young person reading this book, you had loads of money, because sometimes the jobs you were asked to do paid well, quite frankly. You were well known, you had made a name for yourself. Yeah. And you had a sense that people respected you. And for a young person, that can be quite appealing, can't it? So you said at one point you felt you were infallible. You know, nothing could get you. You were infallible. What would you then say to a young person? We've got some young people here today with the experience you have today about this kind of money, fame, and respect you thought you had.
Yeah, I thought I had, yeah. What would I say to any youngsters now? For sure, I really want to get this opinion over that what we thought was a good and a cool idea at the time certainly weren't. And as I say to many people, they made heroes out of the Cray film, the Cray's brothers, the Goodfellas, the Godfather film. We're glorifying violence, and that's certainly not the case. Any young lads in here, any young people, that is not the case. That's not to be, that's not to be glorified. Whether we admit it or not, more often, 99.9% of the times, our fathers or our uncles or grandfathers, etc., they're the ones we should be listening to. Yes, they are right. And it's certainly not a good thing. If you're into your sport, your boxing, there's a way of curving this and being successful from it. But please don't take this pat on the back from these guys to pretend to their faces and their names and the respect thing. That's not the people. They're riding behind you, mate. You know, they're looking for front men. They wanted me as a front man, yeah? Because they didn't have the guts to do it themselves. And now I look back, my heroes come from a completely different circle these days. So any young lads out there, please keep away from the violence. It's really not a good thing. Boxing gyms are nice, but violence isn't.
Yeah. And I found it really interesting when you reflected on it in the book. You thought you had the respect of so many people, but when you reflected on it and dug a bit deeper, it wasn't respect, it was fear.
Yeah.
People were afraid of you, basically.
Yeah. Big difference, isn't there?
Are people still afraid of you, Joe?
Oh, no, not at all. No, not the people who know me, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they might create their own, figure of me, but my friends, many who are here, and, you know, my friends from church, in our life group and so on, I like to think definitely not. No, I want to go out the opposite, and I want to make everybody comfortable and feel quite the opposite in my presence. Absolutely not. I hope they're not, Christoph.
Well, I'm not, Joe.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. I met Joe a few years ago, and I didn't know anything of your previous story. I just met you as the man you are now. And we became friends, and reading your story now, I think if I'd met you aged 18, I wouldn't have wanted to meet you in a dark alley, to be honest. But you're a different man today. And that is such a testimony, you know, it is. And so I find it really interesting. In your book, at one point you say, when you were in the worst season of your life, when all that happened that you've briefly talked about, you say, even in the darkest days, Christ was a nagging presence. And when I was reading your book, I was reminded of one of the best-known stories that Jesus told. It's called the story of the Prodigal Son. A bit like you, there was a son who grew up in a loving family, you know, had a great, loving dad and all the opportunities in life, and then he got off on the wrong track. And he went away, he got in with wrong company, he lost all the money, had quite a bit of money, he lost it in disreputable living. And it then says, when he was at rock bottom, he came to his senses. And sometimes we have to come to our senses, don't we, before we can actually do the turnaround.
Absolutely.
And so I found it interesting, one of your lowest points was when you were actually waiting, you were out on bail, you were waiting for whether you're going to go to jail or not.
Yeah.
You were on your own in a caravan, and you felt desperately lonely. And you know what happens when you're lonely, you took too much to the drink and all the rest of it. That wasn't yet your turnaround moment. Your turnaround moment happened after, by God's grace, the accusation of what you'd done went away. You didn't have to go to prison. And you sat down with your mum and dad, who you hadn't seen for a good time, and you had a chat with them.
Yeah.
Tell us about that moment.
Oh, well, it was quite powerful, hard hitting. I was like my dad just, you know, nice and calmly just give it to me, really. And I was like a boxer with my hands tied behind my back. And I just took my beating. And that was, yeah, it was quite emotional. I think about these things, and as I say, it flashes back, and I'm quite a deep thinker. I think about the situation. And yeah, what a powerful moment. But we were then in an house, not in a caravan. I made it upstairs in tears, and that was it. That was just a turning point. Excuse me. It's quite, yes, it comes back. My mum and dad's passed now, bless them, and it's, yeah, but it was such a powerful moment. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's amazing how it happened, really, because you could have deemed it as a telling off from your dad, but it just becomes so much clearer and stronger than that. And that was me turned, really. I was never going down that road again. You know, I still had moments, you know, it wasn't a complete, my brick wall wasn't completely built and finished, but there was a massive turning point.
Yeah. And you say in your book, that hour or two did more than any beating or any prison sentence could or would have done.
Absolutely.
That's the power of good people loving you and helping you to turn away from the rubbish and turn towards the good.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. I absolutely love how you described that. So after that, after you had that turnaround, what has actually helped you in the years afterwards to turn your life around?
Well, it was a number of things. So, you know, I made that pledge. Right at that time, my dad offered me to become then a golf professional. He offered me an amount of sponsorship, or basically funded me. And so I was then mixing with people in golf circles. So instead of meeting in pubs, plotting crime, or we've got a firm to beat that firm, example, we're now in an environment of the aftermath will be the clubhouse, and how can we play better golf tomorrow? So I'm back into my golf. I become a golf professional. Whilst I was, by my admissions, a bit of a fallen player, my confidence was shot, etc., etc. But at least I'm back in the right circles, and I'm soon to meet a pretty young blonde lady.
Shall we embarrass her?
Shall we? Yeah, go on then.
Because I think she's here.
Yeah. Let's embarrass her, shall we?
The pretty young blonde lady.
Yeah. But then I meet my wife, my beautiful wife to be. I meet her, and she wasn't so fond of me initially. She had a reputation that she wasn't fond of. She didn't want a bad wild man in company, and I had to do some persuading, and I did, and we got a date, and then of course we then started to build a family. And then my responsibilities, so going to prison and stuff like that's off the radar really. You don't want to be doing that stuff if you're fending for a family. So I was doing all the things to support a family really, and turning a back on the previous way of life.
And what an amazing thing that your family are here today. I think, are all your children here today?
They're all here today.
I think they are. Yeah. Yes, Aaron is nodding there, the youngest. Brilliant. And what a wonderful thing to see. You realising, I've got a responsibility now for my wonderful wife, for my children, and so I'm not going to get back into the previous life. No
way. For more than one, well, any man with responsibilities, you then, you know, we have a duty of care, and that primarily is for your wife and children, isn't it?
Yeah. Joe, you are a competitive person, you're ambitious, you've been successful. Mm-hmm. Two of your biggest successes, one earlier in life, one later. You talked about the first earlier. As a young guy of, I think, 16, you won the London Junior Open Trophy in 1987.
Yeah.
And then quite a few years later, together with your son, Reimer, you won the Father and Son Championship in Spain. That was in 2011.
The European Father-Son Championship.
I was underselling that here. The European Father and Son Championship in Spain. Which one means more to you?
Well, golf's such a difficult sport to get right. It's not a career where you sort of have 40 boxing contests and you're pretty good, you win 35. It's quite the reverse. You're lucky to excel one in every 15 weeks. So they're both very, very precious to me. But to achieve something on your own is fantastic. To achieve it then with your son, he probably has to stick out as that special moment, because you're sort of, you've got the same emotions going through you, but you're doubling it really. So I can not only boast as being a European champion as an old man, one day my son will be an old man and he can boast the same. So that was a very, very special moment, because you don't have to only play well, you have to become a good father as well. And believe me, you wouldn't see how much was involved in me fathering my son round the event. On the first round, he's sitting over there, and he will admit this, and especially the second round, it was a really tough, windy day, and I was playing solid, and that's probably my best conditions, tough, windy conditions, and I'm playing away, and he's playing loose, and erratic golf, and I said, look, come here, son, put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, you're assuming I'm going to continue playing well. In a moment, you know what golf's like, I'm going to make a mistake. Stick with me, and he did. And the same in round 3, being the younger of the two, he sort of had a slight head off here and there. Not a tantrum, but a little bit down, saying, right, stay with me. I just got this fantastic par putting, stay with me. And he went birdie, birdie, birdie. We lifted the championship and we beat the US champions in the second spot. So sorry for going on with that, but that was brilliant. Yeah.
Come on. Here's another quote from the time after you turned your life around. You said this: "I knew that I had to overcome my temper if I was ever to make myself a better person, and I vowed to redouble my efforts in that area." And in some parts of the book, you talk about when someone challenged you, when things got really bad, something like a red mist coming down. How do you deal with a red mist? What have you learned about that?
Well, it's getting easier. I have to, when I'm not so good in my behaviour area, I have to look, I ask God, why am I like this? Maybe it's part of my makeup, but I certainly try to be a gentleman, and I don't always react in that way, but I try to be, and I really try to, I've got a good ability of walking away from trouble, a good ability, but, I probably still have a breaking point, but I think that breaking point would only be self-defence or my family being, or another, I have this saying, if somebody's making my God unhappy, they're probably making me unhappy. So if somebody was in there being picked upon, something out there in an area, I'd like to think my self-defence skills could kick in. But other than that, you really ain't going to get no trouble off me, trust me. I'm a good guy, and trust me like that. It's self-boasting's not very good, but I'm not going to cause any trouble, so I'm getting better at it.
Just warning you, don't cause him trouble. Don't get into his breaking point.
Christoph's worse than me these days, trust me.
Here's another quote. Bernard Langer, golf-wise, he was my hero, you write. And there's another touch point here, because Bernard Langer is probably the most famous German golfer who's ever lived. And although I don't have much experience at all with golf, he really was one of the people that we as young people looked up to, because he was so successful as a sportsman, and he made no secret about the fact that he was a committed Christian. Mm-hmm. And so he became a Christian just days after the first big success of his career, the US Masters win in 1985, which made him then the world number one. In interviews, he has spoken of being happily married, having lots of material things, but still sensing there was an emptiness inside. And then he was taken to a Bible study in America by someone who was chaplain for the golfers. And that chaplain spoke about a story in the Bible where an older man comes to see Jesus in the middle of the night and says, "What must I do, to have eternal life?" And Jesus says to him, "No one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." And Langer realized that although he had heard lots of Bible stories as a little boy, he hadn't really understood what the Christian faith is all about. It wasn't just about being good and earning a place in heaven, it was about grace. You don't deserve being born. Being born is grace. And he realized, oh my goodness, I can be born as a child of God, and it's just grace. I can have a fresh start, and I can receive the gift of eternal life as a gift. And so he realized what was missing in his life was that personal relationship with God through Jesus. And again, that relates so to your story, because your new beginning was a work of grace, that you didn't go down, that you didn't have to spend time in prison, that through the good work of your parents, you had that turnaround, and then, you actually rediscovered your faith that had always been there to a degree.
Yep.
There was a moment in your life when it sort of hit you that God is real.
Yeah.
And that was at a very sad moment of your life, when your granny passed away.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, again, Christoph's got a way of, he hits me with all these emotional bits.
Sorry.
And I'm an emotional person, but again, because I can just relate to it. Like yesterday, I was really, really close to my beautiful grandparents, and she died, so naturally grief-stricken, devastated. And I think, I'm not sure here, but I think it's an old Christian value when they used to bring back their loved ones bring back the body of the deceased person overnight. So we very much did that in our people, in Romany very much did that. I think it's an old Christian thing, I think. So we brought back my gran for a couple of nights before the funeral, and me and my brother sat around in the room with her, and she had a big statue of a China Jesus, a big cross around her neck. She always had in her bedroom, and that was placed in this room. And my gran was laying the rest, and we were spending time in the casket and stroking around, and said, okay, it was about 20 minutes, half an hour. Okay, Gran, love you, see you in a bit. So me and my brother left the room. My brother went that way. Sorry, before I left, I kissed the forehead of the statue of Jesus, and I said, my Gran have worshipped you, she love you. Please take care of her. My brother walks this way out of the room, I walk that way out of the room, and they had this absolutely amazing, I can't express it enough, this glowing, out of body experience. It's very, very difficult, but it's a warm, beautiful glow. And all my tears of grief, anger, turned to tears of joy imminently. And whilst I'm a little emotional again, I never cried for my Gran. From that very moment, I said, I know loud and clear, Gran, that you're in the safekeep of Jesus Christ, and you've gone to a good home. But it was the most wonderful, wonderful experience. Beautiful, beautiful sensation. All I can say to you is, if anybody, in my opinion, this is me, you can think what you want of me, but I don't. I used to believe in hope in Jesus. Now I believe in no. I don't hope, I know. I know my Lord Jesus Christ is there. I know that. And if you want to believe me, some of you, 50%, 20%, 99%, that's your choice. But trust me, he's there 1,000,000%. And that was a great, powerful experience. And from then on, he makes most of my decisions for me, which is a lot saner than my ones.
Yeah. And I know, Joe, this is going off the script a bit, but I know you believe in the power of prayer. Just some months ago, before your 50th birthday, you had a really serious case of COVID. You had to go to hospital.
I did.
And you WhatsApped us, just some of your friends in the church, and said, I'm in a bad way, pray for me. And it's so amazing, isn't it, when we can come to God together and say, God, we need your help.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here today.
God, and my friends were in the life group, and I'll take an opportunity to apologise. I don't always jump on, almost sounds like I jump on when I need a bit of help. I don't always jump on the life group chat because I'm a little bit in fear of being a busy lifestyle, not returning the messages. So I tend to try to keep away from it, but I did reach out, and I had lots of prayers and friends from the church and family, and I thank God I got the other side, and not only got the other side nicely without any complications.
Yeah, amazing. There is one moment in the book, and we're nearly at the end, I'm afraid, but we want to have some space for questions as well for the last few minutes, where you are talking to your son Reimer, and you say to him, the man that walks away from a fight is no coward. And as you said that, you remembered that more or less exactly the same words were said to you by your grandfather Reimer, same name.
Yeah.
The man that walks away from a fight is no coward.
Yeah.
If you say that again, if you say that to a young person who wants to assert themselves, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? And I imagine maybe it didn't make a lot of sense to you when your granddad said that to you.
Well, I think life in God has got a wonderful way of dealing with things. I remember about 10 or 11 year old, because my grandfather was 12 when he passed, and I was about 10 or 11, and he said exactly what words he said was, "It takes a better man to walk away from a fight, and one day you'll find out." And I was, yeah, but grandfather, but he said, well, no, just used to use the phrase, "Mark my words," so you have to almost mark them on the chalkboard and keep them there, so that when you relate back. So I now mark his words all these years on, 40 years on. And I marked in my mind, It takes a much better man to walk away from a fight than it does to have one. And that's a clear message for any youngsters out there, you know. And you'll get your way. You'll find out that you'll be the stronger man. You mightn't see it. It's actually happened to me, and I won't go on about it here and now, but it's actually happened to me on 1 or 2 occasions. People have challenged, and I thought, no, this won't be much good, having a physical fight with this bloke. And it's worked out. It's worked out for me. And, you know, lesser people had proven fragilities in the man that wanted to take me on. And I wouldn't have done any good of it, you know, by physically hurting somebody doesn't make you a winner, does it? Yeah. It makes you a loser. Love makes you a winner. Let's shake hands, have a beer, or even if you necessarily don't particularly like each other, you still don't have to hurt anybody. It doesn't make you a winner. So if there's any young lads out there, you don't need to break bones to prove yourself.
Yeah. And you know, when you wrote that sentence, the man that walks away from a fight is no coward, it reminded me of the Jesus we both believe in. He took a beating. He took the most brutal beating in history because as a son of God, there was nothing in him that was wrong. And he took a beating and he did not retaliate. They said to him, if you're the son of God, just call on the heaven's angel armies, you know, why are you not walking down from this cross? He did not. He didn't retaliate. It looked like he was the loser. And on the 3rd day, he walked away as the winner. He rose from the dead. And that's why you and I can sit here today.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's such an amazing lesson in life.
Well, there you are. That's just what I was... Christoph put it in a much more powerful, stronger way. But if you just sit back patiently, yeah, you'll see why it takes the stronger man, for sure.
Joe, a few years ago now, you decided you were going to hang up your boxing gloves. You had your last boxing match, and you actually used it as an opportunity to make a stand. You, I think, would have won by points, but you wanted the referee to hold both your hands up.
That's correct.
So that it really is a great positive end to that fight. And you said, but I also want the microphone at the end. And you made a stand against violence, against gang violence amongst young people. And afterwards, a reporter from a local paper interviewed you and said, what's next, Joe? And you said, that's it now. That's it. No more boxing for me. But, you know, it's not it yet. You're here. God has given you, by God's grace, many years to come. So here's the question again. What's next, Joe?
Well, I'm still, I've just had an elbow operation, as we said earlier, and we touched on that. So I could have limbered through life as it was, but I'm still very much you know, I am a golfer and a boxer. So whilst I might not want to compete as a boxer, I still like practicing a bit. And I'm very much an ambitious golfer. And I have 3 grandchildren, and whilst it mightn't seem an ambition, but it sort of is, I have to be, and I've got very nearly, I must say, number 4 on the way. My daughter-in-law was nearly, we thought the young Reimer was going to be born prematurely just a couple of days ago. But his time will be right when it's right. So for me, it's just to be, my ambition is to be the nicest person I can be, and that won't be perfect, trust me, but be the nicest person I can be and be the best father and grandfather I can possibly be. And and just be the best sportsman as I can be, and the best Christian I can be. So, but as I say, I will make mistakes, especially on my golf.
So if anyone wants to challenge Joe to a game of golf, he's up for that. I've seen your hands. You can talk to him afterwards. Brilliant. Joe, thank you so much. And I know your book and your life experience has given you a number of opportunities to speak about your life experience. And that's another thing which may grow in months and years to come. With your permission, we're going to put this talk up on our own church website. I know you've done a couple of podcasts. You're just establishing your own YouTube channel, and you'll see what God does with it. You know, whether He blesses it, whether it grows. But there's so many open doors. You're just knocking on and seeing which ones God will open, and that's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm just basically want to get a word out there. If I can give a little bit, I feel very blessed. Cutting a long story short, it could have went much worse for me than it actually did. I feel very blessed. I've got another opportunity, and if I can give back something, then I'll be at one person. If it's more, then great. But I want to send the message out there to the youngsters. Let's get into sport. Let's do some cool things. Violence is not it. and you know, cutting corners is not it. Thieving, violence, forget that. Let's get a job, let's get a career, let's do our sport, be the best we can be, and that's a really good thing to do. And you'll also make your parents happy and much more content and less worried. You know, they'll be much happier with that. So that's me really, finishing off. I just want to, that's it, get a message out there. I love you all, although I don't know you all. Good luck to you all, and that's all I can say. And God bless you all, always. Thank you.